Blessings, everybody. I hope you're doing well wherever you may find yourselves. I'm Dane, host of the channel. How are Beowulf, the epic poem, the TV show Supernatural, video gaming, the NFL, and the movie Demolition Man all related to musicians and the overall umbrella of music? So, I will explain as I go through this video, which is about what makes a real musician. You have on one hand the musician, and then you have on the other hand the musician. On one hand, you have the real musician. The other, you have the quasi-musician or the semi-musician, or we could call it the pseudo-musician, aka the fake musician, the hack, the quack, the fraud. Now, before I go any further, I have to give credit where credit is due. I am going to be quoting a lot from a blogger. Her name is Victoria Bowler at victoriabowler.com. And her blog, this particular blog, is The 3 Philosophies of Music Education. All right, and as we go through these 3 areas, I will then connect it to the things that don't seem to connect, movies, etc. According to Miss or Mrs. Bowler, the 3 philosophies of music ed are utilitarian, aesthetic, and praxial. That is, have praxis, or relating to the word practice. All right, so let's talk about utilitarian. I'm essentially quoting her word for word here with all 3 areas. The first is utilitarian, as I said, which is music education is practical. It gives us a character education, school values, and improves the brain and helps language development. Now, the above, which is utilitarian, is not about musical growth, but about an outcome outside the musical realm. So, involving yourself in the musical realm has practical, utilitarian applications outside of music. So important. In essence, according to Ms. Bowler or Mrs. Bowler, music is the following: math, language, history, reading, science. Music education is important because it has a positive impact on other subjects, content areas. Now, before I go any further, nowhere am I saying that it has to be a university or school level education, high school tutoring, lessons. You're self-taught, that's still, doing your due diligence and getting, you're self-educating. It's still education, school values, character, improving the brain, all that. So by no means are I saying you have to spend money, and because my musical education is self-taught, most of it anyway. I've had lessons, but a lot of what I've done is self-taught as well. Okay, a combination thereof. All right, so again, the utilitarian, number 1, has an impact on other subjects, content areas, and therefore makes a holistic approach to learning why you should learn music in any way, shape, or form, as I said. The next is aesthetic. You get better at music itself. This is the growth. This is not about the function of music, but rather viewing music itself as the value. Music for music's sake, under the umbrella of art for art's sake, very Victorian, Oscar Wilde, that kind of thing, right? This is a feelings-based experience, the aesthetic. It is subjective. When we study music, we are studying expressive sonic practices, or rather, properties, my handwriting a little there, according to Victoria Bowler. Okay, these expressive sonic properties that convey an emotional message. So say you're listening to Stairway to Heaven. That's a very emotional song from the beginning through end, especially when you listen to the lyrics coupled with the emotional renaissance once it goes into the transition from the acoustic to the electric part, and then the way the song ends, the way Plant expresses to be a rock and not to roll. It's just amazing, right? So that's an example of that. Music is a product, a vehicle we use to have these feelings based on experiences. The next is praxial, as I mentioned. This is improvisation, or to improvise, to listen, to perform, to compose, to arrange. These are human activities. Notice the word is human. Okay? Human lives and thoughts and actions are inherently valuable. Okay? The cultural background of us humans, the musical traditions of us humans, and the student's own performance or listening interpretations. Okay, so as I said, it's holistic. Music is planning, it's producing, creating, composing, playing, editing, revising, reflecting. As a school teacher, English and U.S. history, I'm big on having the students reflect on their work and ideas that they came up with, or ideas presented thematically or by way of verisimilitude in what they're reading. Okay? Essentially, overall, music is cultural and is social context. It has meaning. Overall, it's holistic. Okay. All right. So, how is this related to there are musicians and there are musicians, the real versus the unreal, or the fake, the phony, whatever you want to call it? Well, technology. There are pros and cons to technology. And many of us still riding the wake or waves of, it's been a month or so now, Rick Beato and the backlash he got in some cases praise about how music is not what it used to be. People have, as I said, responded positively. Some people have responded negatively, some in between. One video, I don't remember the channel. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I guess I stopped. I know I stopped watching it because the person's argument against Rick Beato began with what is called reductio ad absurdum. This is a logical fallacy. I'll go ahead and read the formal definition. A method of proving the falsity of a premise by showing that its logical consequences is absurd or contradictory. So this is essentially when you take logic to such an extreme that you end up saying something absurd. And what this person's absurdism was, if that's a word, was AI is okay. Making music with just a computer and no musical instruments is valid because back in the day, the acoustic guitar was transformed by the technology of electric guitar. Yes, but the logic is flawed there because it's still a musical instrument. See? All right, so now back to my initial questions. Okay, how are Beowulf, Supernatural, the TV show, the Winchester brothers, right? Video gaming, the NFL, and the movie Demolition Man connected to all this? Well, let's talk about Beowulf. An epic poem I teach I give the greatest hits of that story. I don't teach the whole epic because this is high school, not college. But Beowulf fights the monster Grendel on equal terms. He knows that Grendel doesn't use weapons, so he chooses not to. So he doesn't have an advantage. Because if he were to have an advantage by the culture of the times, Anglo-Saxon and Viking Middle Ages, to have an advantage would mean you're not earning honor, you're not earning your reputation, you're not earning glory, because it's lessened by the fact that you had an advantage. That's the culture of the times. And in many ways, for many of us, we believe that as well. So if you here's the connection to the NFL. Mark Schlereth, who played for the Denver Broncos, he admitted to cheating. And in an interview, when asked, so it's true you guys put Vaseline on your jerseys? And he said, you goddamn right. And he was very very arrogant about it. But he didn't use the word. He said, we wanted a competitive edge. That's a euphemism for cheating. Okay? So Mark Schlereth and the Broncos did not win. Well, they won those 2 Super Bowls, but they won it through cheating, and therefore they didn't earn it. So that's where I'm going, but I'm going to say a little bit more. Okay, the TV show Supernatural. There's an episode where Chuck, who we learn is Yahweh or God the Father, has no guitar skills, but with the snap of a finger, he makes himself able to play the acoustic guitar. So he misses all the steps. You see where I'm going with this? There's no learning curve. There's no fun. There's no engagement. There's none of the things I mentioned, the utilitarian, the aesthetic, and the practical. See, he cheated. Okay? Video games. Should be obvious. Cheat codes. If you I beat the game or I won the game, you didn't earn it if you use cheat codes. Okay? Now the movie Demolition Man. There's one interesting, wonderful scene with Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone. And Sandra Bullock's character is falling for Sly Stone's character. And she wants to have relations with him. So Stallone pulls out the virtual goggles. And she's like, wait a minute. This isn't real. See where I'm going with that? So same thing. It's virtual sex. It's not real. So the notion of real versus unreal, okay? Technology, too much technology, is a hindrance on musicianship or what it means to be a real musician. To quote the famous director and actor Orson Welles, the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. So think about it. Can you imagine if the Sistine Chapel, the Mona Lisa, Picasso's Guernica were created by AI or a computer? Where are the brush strokes? Where's the choice of color? See? Where's the decision to just, in Guernica's case, use black and white? If you take some artists in the Middle Ages, they would paint their canvas black and then add color, right? So now let's talk about musicians, vocalists in this case. I'm going to use two examples, Robert Plant and Janis Joplin. They have that raspiness to their voice. Can you imagine applying AI to that and removing it? It takes the fun out of it. It takes the uniqueness out of their vocal talent, right? Let's talk about, very briefly, the male poet Shelley, Mary Shelley's husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley. His attempt to write in the style, successful attempt partially to write in the style of Dante. His Triumph of Life, a very long poem which ends abruptly because of his passing. It's a fragment, and yet people still hold it in high esteem. Professors, teachers, students. Lots have been written about it. There was supposed to be more to it, and yet one of the things that the Romantics embrace and praise, and others outside of Romanticism, students of, if you will, is the fragment as a piece of artwork. Even though it's incomplete, it has value, it has merit. So the limitations of Shelley dying, there's some tragedy there because we don't know all of Shelley's intent and agenda behind the poem, but there's still something there that's valuable. So again, the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. So, now, essentially what we have here, and again, this is just my opinion, if you have someone who has no skill at playing any musical instrument whatsoever, they're skipping the meat. Imagine going into a store, a fast food joint, or even better than that, a fancy restaurant, and ordering a hamburger. And you get the bun and the lettuce, the tomato, and all the toppings, but the meat is gone. That's essentially what musicians who don't play an instrument and just have a computer to create music. They're skipping the fun. They're skipping the crucial steps. They're skipping the aesthetic value. They're skipping the utilitarian. There is some learning going on with the programming. I'll use that word again in a minute. They have computer skills, to some degree, some math and science, but overall pales in comparison to whether self-taught or at the university or high school or taking lessons with someone or combination thereof. There's much more connection to the math and the science if you're got an instrument in your hand, or right, brass, woodwind, strings, on, right, percussion. A lot more learning going on. Okay, so I'm not saying that people who have computers to make music don't have a skill. That is a skill, but it pales in comparison to the person with the instrument in their hand at their disposal. That, to me, is what a real musician is. Okay? So those who just make music out of a computer using AI or Pro Tools or Auto-Tune or quantizing things, I'm totally in agreement with Rick Beato on this. Okay? You're frauds. You're the Mark Schlereth of the music world. Okay? You have a competitive edge because you have a computer in front of you. But you're not a real musician because you can't play a musical instrument. So essentially what this means is these people with computers that make music and have no skill whatsoever at an instrument, they're not musicians. They're programmers. Thanks for watching. Take care.